It's our special meeting workshop for May 18th, 2021. Can I have a motion to approve our agenda?
So moved. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Do we both have to do that?
Yes, they'll do theirs too. Do we have Michelle Thompson on Zoom? There we go.
I am. I'm here. I just got sound.
Michelle, we just approved our agenda, and so if you would like to ask your board for a motion and improve yours, and then I can take it from there.
Sure. Can I please get a motion to approve tonight's agenda for the joint meeting workshop?
I'll move that we approve tonight's agenda for the joint meeting workshop.
I'll second that.
Hearing a motion in a second, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries.
Well, thank you. Welcome, everyone. It's nice to meet everyone in person and have an opportunity to get together. And so I will make introductions here real quick. We have Chair of the Lakeland Board, Michelle Thompson. She's joining us by Zoom. To my far right is Board Member Randy Bain. To her left, third to my right, is Debbie Major, Board Member. Two over from me is Ramona Grissom, board member, and then to my immediate right is Rob Irons, who is vice chair of the Lakeland Board. I am Chair Jennifer Brumley of the Coeur d'Alene School District Board. To my immediate left is Rebecca Smith, vice chair of the board. Two down and to her left is Casey Morrisroe, trustee. And then third down from me is board member Lisa May. And then to the far left up here, the dais is Tamara Pickford, board member. We also have this evening joining us our two superintendents from the two districts, Dr. Stephen Cook from Coeur d'Alene School District and Dr. Becky Meyer from Lakeland School District. So thank you everyone again. Welcome and excited for our discussions this evening. So without further ado, I will turn this over to Dr. Cook.
Thank you, Chair Brumley. As the short-staffed superintendent of the two of us, I get the luxury of doing the talking of the two of us. So hopefully you won't hear much of us, and we'll get a little bit of an opportunity to hear from Jeff and Brian as they will walk us through some of this. So I'd like to just kind of begin by starting the meeting with why we're here. We are in consideration and would like to talk about smoothing out our northern boundary, and I think it would be considered the southeastern boundary of the Lakeland School District, and how that line cuts across kind of that general, I'll just use Lancaster as kind of the general rule. It actually staggers down, and we'll get maps up on the screen later on. But smoothing that out with a general transition of land from in one location to between districts, and another general transition of land in the other corner of the boundary. And by both process and statutory obligation, this joint meeting is a necessity so that both boards are fully informed, know the decisions they would be considering, and that the patrons of both school districts have an opportunity to opine on those decisions. And so we are here today to start that process collectively. I would also add that this is a conversation that I think when I got here 3 years ago, the Coeur d'Alene School District was just tidying up the western boundary of the Coeur d'Alene School District and the eastern boundary of the Post Falls District. And as you all know, that those changes are actually due to the enormous amount of growth that we've had. And so rather than these kind of piecemeal annexations that can create such havoc, we saw an opportunity to take advantage of this conversation prior to, there's developments platted in both locations in the areas that we're going to be talking about. And currently there are no houses, well, with the exception of existing housing, there are no houses that would be directly impacted that will be in just a few years highly developed on both of these tradable locations. And so if there is a reason to do this process, we felt it would be highly advantageous to do it before it impacted families that might be moving into both of those regions. And so for us, the timing on this conversation is really important so that we're trying to do this prior to that impact. And I think we want to have an opportunity for the both boards to ask questions about this. And I don't know, I'm glad to offer the mic to Becky, but I would just say we would like to turn this over to both Jeff Fuller, our Director of Operations, and Brian Wallace, Director of Everything at the Lakeland School District, and let them kind of talk about the map suggestions that we've been in discussion with for quite some time. So unless you have any questions for either of us, we'd like the people that do all the real work to start talking now.
Good evening. Give me just a minute. I'll pull up a couple of the maps here and we can show you the proposed areas that we've been discussing. So this is the portion that is in the Coeur d'Alene School District that we would propose going to the Lakeland School District. So, and this is all largely the area of Hayden Canyon, so it's slated to be the Hayden Canyon development. Is it not? What were you saying? Yeah, I am on. Yeah. Here, I can move it a little closer. Does that help? Okay, there we go. So this is the area that would be known as the development in Hayden Canyon. So I think it makes a lot of sense to bring all of the Hayden Canyon development down into that Lakeland School District. And then, do we have that other map in the booth? Oh, here, I think I can scroll this way. Okay, and then this is the portion of that would, in the Lakeland School District, that would go to the Coeur d'Alene School District in this proposal. So this is Hayden Avenue up on top here. This is really a prairie trail called Harvest and Bean down in here, but it would encompass this area in red would go to the Coeur d'Alene School District. So Brian, do you have anything to add to that?
I'd just like to reiterate what Dr. Cook had said, that this conversation has been not just now, but several years ago. So you can see why is that line around, I'm not sure if that's Giovanni Estates. Well, that's because that actually used to be Lakeland several years ago. And that was the patrons came and asked to be, in the other process that you can do to shift boundaries, to be into the Coeur d'Alene School District from Lakeland, because Atlas Elementary is just right there. You know, you can see it just 900 feet or whatever. So at that time, the Lakeland board was neutral, and the Coeur d'Alene board, I think, was either for or neutral, and so the state board approved that annexation. After that, I think Viking Homes then did ask for another parcel, I think just dead south, to get in, and that's when Superintendent Cook was here for that year as interim. And we had a hearing at Atlas Elementary, and at that point, the district said, well, we want to try to redraw it more smartly, and so the state board said, okay, they'll keep status quo until you guys can see what a good option would be, and it's just taken us a couple years to sort of get our ducks in a row and look at what would make sense. But it certainly makes sense to, at least from a finance person who likes lines straight, and to have the arterials be the boundaries, and by going over to Hutter, it does tie into where the Post Falls School District boundary is, so it does make a lot of sense. It affects more patrons right now that actually have homes, going to Coeur d'Alene, I don't think there's anybody who has a resident in the other area that it impacts.
I believe you're right.
Yeah, so it's really almost vacant land. I shouldn't say vacant, but not patrons' residences as far as it's not going to affect any kids on what school district they're going to is up by Hayden Canyon. So I guess that's just a little additional background, but on sort of why and how this came to be.
I would also add, just for note, that right where the little plus on the screen is the 40 acres of vacant land that the Coeur d'Alene School District owns for future consideration of school properties. And it's right on the border of that Harvest and Bean, which isn't an ideal location. So this does give a little bit of buffer to that location for a future build of a school to the north there.
And if I may add, the challenge of if the Coeur d'Alene School District ever does place a school in that particular location, then you would actually have, theoretically, that's honeysuckle if it were to go all the way through. You would have students that currently could live on the north side of the Honeysuckle Street that live in the Lakeland School District that would create some challenges. And so there is some very real benefit to this conversation that could create, now we're talking about at least that whole other, what is it, half mile, I think, or quarter mile or half mile, I think, to Hayden Avenue that creates that, that just kind of boundary kind of buffer is probably the best term. And it would also, as those houses develop there, those houses develop into, if a school was ever placed there, knowing that that would be their location. And it makes a lot of sense, along with whatever happens at the other end on Hayden Canyon, to do the same thing.
Can I ask a question? Is that all right? Do you know on this parcel here, are there any students currently that are in that area that are living in any of those homes that would be impacted?
So those would be your students. Do you know the answer to that?
There were 3.
I know this was a little trickier when we did our swap with Post Falls because we gave up, I think, kind of substantial developed land. It was a number of homes, maybe 100 or 150 homes, something like that, for raw land or vacant land. And I know at that time we did some grandfathering, and I think Post Falls did too, because there were a few Post Falls students impacted. I don't think we grandfathered busing. Maybe if we did, it was maybe 1 year or something like that. But do we have any idea on that? I guess that's more a Lakeland issue than a Coeur d'Alene issue.
Yeah, I mean, we do run, buses right down Hayden because that development just to the north. And then, of course, we have going out Rimrock and things like that. So, yeah, we'd provide transportation for those families if need be.
I think, are we in discussion on this yet, Ms. Brumley, or do we have to wait till after public comments? Just questions at this point?
You're a little ahead of everybody,
Okay.
Casey, so, but
That's my
we'll
only
get there.
question I have. Thank you.
Okay, so according to the agenda, I had Dr. Cook and I had Dr. Meyer, but did these two gentlemen take your spot? Dr. Meyer? Okay.
Better than we do, so we decided to delegate that to them.
Okay, well, maybe you weren't as far ahead as I thought you were. The next is public comment, but I don't believe there's anybody in the room for public comment. And so I guess that would, at this point, open it up for questions or comments from trustees. So, and I don't know, Michelle, if you wanted to start or you had questions first and with your board, however you'd like to do that.
No, I currently don't have any questions. I know our board has discussed this matter. Do any of the board members have questions they'd like to bring forward now?
I do, Madam Chair. I would just like a little bit of clarification on the boundary lines and the maps that we were being shown, because the line went over the names of the streets, because Dr. Cook keeps referring to Hayden Avenue. So I would like to know where exactly is that represented on the maps that we're seeing?
If this helps, I have it right here. It's
Okay.
this top road. You can see.
Oh,
it
so
just
the
barely
top
under
is
the-
Hayden.
That's Hayden.
Okay. And then it extends south to Bean.
Yes,
Yes.
this is Bean right here.
Okay.
Going across, and then that's Hutter on the far
On the-
left.
Yep,
in on
so the west side of it, and then the east side is Atlas, and it makes,
It goes into that
yep,
subdivision.
okay. All right, I just wasn't clear on my direction there, so I appreciate it, thank you.
And I think Bean is honeysuckle when we're down here like by 95, and
Okay,
it changes names. I think it's honeysuckle, then Bean, then harvest, right?
Yeah, which is, it's really not a road, it's a prairie trail going through that land right now.
I do have one other question. We spoke about, and it's something I'm not sure that we looked at on our end, but we spoke about these parcels already being under plat. Do we have pictures or maps of those plats, or do we know those plats' names other than the Hayden Charter area, Hayden Canyon? I
Yeah,
guess
Hayden
we call it?
Canyon, I think I even have that plat in my office.
Okay.
Because that was platted like 10 years ago, so.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, I can certainly get that information for you, and as far as the plats of this, I'm not sure.
Okay.
On the south,
I'm
I
sure I
know,
can look it
well,
up.
some of it is because there's, some development as you come down Hutter, just on the south side of Hayden right now. I mean, there's some
Yeah,
some
The Viking
multifamily
homes
housing coming up.
yeah, the Viking home stuff that you mentioned earlier, Brian, is going in there kind of, I think to some extent as we speak. Most of it is north of Hayden Road, but they do have some development going in south of Hayden Road as well.
Okay,
There's an
thank you.
apartment complex going in right around here right now. So I think this area is plotted. I've not seen a full plot for that, but I believe the rest of this is owned by other developers that still have vacant land and probably have ideas, but I don't think are as far along as having actual plots.
Oh, I
design.
think you're right. That's the Coeur d'Alene Technology Center or area where they're putting in the multi-unit housing right now.
Yes,
Okay,
correct. Yes.
okay. Thank you.
Anybody else from Lakeland? Questions, comments? All right, Coeur d'Alene folks. I have a couple questions then. It would be very helpful to me if we could just look at the two maps, and maybe I should already know this, but like looking at the first map with Hayden Canyon, is the yellow line, if we can go to the other map, is the yellow line across there, what road is that?
Lancaster.
Lancaster, and so south of that, Coeur d'Alene School District, correct?
Yes.
And then north of that is Lakeland currently, except for that little L shape that we're carving out to swap. Am I to understand that correctly?
Correct. So if the red is what would go to Lakeland, so that's currently Coeur d'Alene, so the boundary would be, that top red line would have been the Lakeland Coeur d'Alene boundary before, or as it is now.
Okay, I'm just making sure. So everything else around there is all Lakeland. It's just this little L piece that's Coeur d'Alene. Is that right?
The stuff on the right is Coeur d'Alene.
Oh, okay. Okay, that was my question.
Yeah,
Coeur d'Alene.
that's Coeur d'Alene. So the line then continues north, and I can't remember how far it goes, and then eventually it cuts east-west and becomes Lakeland.
Goes to Dodd, I think, there, doesn't it?
Okay, yeah.
Goes out, that's North Rimrock there, and North Rimrock curves around and becomes Dodd and
Okay.
heads.
Okay. Yes.
The other piece that we decided when we were discussing is where all that turquoise is and all of the houses right there. We didn't want to mess with that because it's too many residents, so we moved the line over. That's why that's still turquoise.
Okay, so the turquoise is Coeur d'Alene School
Yes,
District then?
and not
Okay.
to, we just decided not to square it off, even though Brian likes square lines. We decided that was just too many houses that were already in the district, and it'd be too much grandfathering anyway, so that's why we moved it over. And then that little strip, Brian, you might explain, that little strip is gonna stay with Coeur d'Alene as well? Yeah.
Yeah, because that's a resident. They just have a 5 or 10 acre lot. So we just took where it was, I believe it's one owner of those two southern lots is the same owner.
Yeah.
Okay. And so
but-
go ahead.
Yeah, we were just trying to minimize the impact to
Yeah.
current students and families.
And could you go to the next map for me, Jeff?
Just real quick while we're on that one, and it's hard to see without the plat, but all that other property that's to the left of the red line and to the top of the red line, that's all that vacant land is Hayden Canyon. And if you've seen the plat, the roads kind of carve all through there, and it would be kind of like the trail subdivision used to be, where when we had Post Falls, Coeur d'Alene split there, you actually had neighbors who one went to Coeur d'Alene, one went to Post Falls, or people across the street. It was different schools. It makes a lot of sense to me that we do this before there's houses there.
Okay. And then everything west of Hutter is Post Falls. And then the Hayden, north of that is still Coeur d'Alene, or where is Lakeland in there? That's what I'm curious about.
The current Lakeland boundary is right here. And so the new Lakeland boundary would be here. So this would be Lakeland up in here. This would be Post Falls over in here. And I don't know where you guys bump with Post Falls. Do you know that? Okay.
So our current boundary, I believe, comes down this way. This is Atlas. So on this side right now is Coeur d'Alene. On this side is Lakeland right now. But then Lakeland continues down this way. And so, and this is all Lakeland. So if this was a development, and Atlas Elementary's right here, they're in Lakeland School District, and the people north of them are in Coeur d'Alene School District right now. So that's what we're trying to do, is have Coeur d'Alene be this whole square. And so you'd be coming across at Atlas. This would be the boundary, Atlas and Hayden. So this is Lakeland, this is Coeur d'Alene. But on this side, this is Coeur d'Alene currently, and so that wouldn't change.
Okay, thank you. That answers my question, and maybe I'm erroneously presuming, but is there a joint recommendation by the superintendents that this happen?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, that's all my questions or comments.
Chairman Brumley, I do have a question. I am curious if the amount of land that's considering, if it's equal, or if in acreage wise, or if there's more with one, less with another. It's hard to tell on the maps that are presented, and the ones that I have here are the same map. So I apologize, but I'd just like some clarification on that.
Yeah, I did a rough scale on that, and there is a little bit more property that would come to the Coeur d'Alene School District. I think it's 240 acres to the Coeur d'Alene School District, and it's 110 to Lakeland. And that was a really rough scale based off of the aerial GIS maps on the county.
Okay, so you say roughly 240 to 110.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, is there any other questions or comments? Anyone have a motion?
I just
Go ahead,
have
Dave.
one question, just about the process. Because I think Tamber and I went through this before with Post Falls, and Lisa, you probably were on the board too, right? But kind of what are the steps beyond this? I know this is part of the process, but then could you walk us through that?
Yeah, so we need to have a survey done of the boundaries, and so basically it's a legal description of all the, like every corner, every turn has a legal description in that, and so so we would retain a surveyor to do that. In fact, that's in process right now. We've identified the same surveyor that did the Post Falls boundary for us, and he's given us a quote on that. That's about a 6-week process, and then then a petition is written to the state, along with the survey of the legal descriptions between the two school districts, and then that would be submitted to the state for approval.
That's the State Board of Ed? Is that who does that?
I believe so, yes. Yes.
Okay, well, I think either chair would entertain a motion by its boards if there were to be one. Oh, there's no action?
There's no action.
Oh, I apologize. Then I guess we just got informed and then we go back and add it to our agendas later. My apologies. So, okay. Well, thank you. Well, is there anything else that anybody needed to present or comment on then?
I think that's it for us for today.
I think I have just one more question in case somebody comes back to watch the video. Do we know what the zoning is between the two land swaps? Or that's something we can find out? I mean, obviously that can always change in the future, but I was curious if we had that information.
Yeah, we can get that information. We can get that information. I mean, definitely it was agricultural or, farming on some of those plats, but for the area that would come to Lakeland, it's zoned residential and it has been platted for years. And so that, I'm not sure Hayden Canyon's rollout of development, but I think they're getting close. And definitely it's going to be probably a mix of residential and maybe light commercial down south for Coeur d'Alene, but it'll fill in with houses, multifamily, I'm sure, over time.
Thank you.
I guess my question would be not having any formal action or motion. Is there an inclination by the board so each side would have a sense of where they're headed? Does anybody? I mean, I'm in favor of this. I guess I would say that so that everybody knows that. If people are comfortable talking about that.
I guess my only cause, it's Rob talking.
Yeah, I just think
Sorry, Rob.
I just wanted you to know that my opinion was that the land swap cleans the boundaries up, and it just makes sense for both school districts. And you don't ever know how the development's going to roll out, but I certainly know that the boundaries make sense.
Go ahead, Chair Thompson.
Oh, thanks. I see everybody looking and it's not at me, but maybe it is. I am in favor of this. I just, when it was originally presented to us, it was more, my understanding was that the land swap was more equal. I'm just a little concerned that you guys are getting more than double the amount of land that we are getting. So that just gives me pause for concern, but I am in favor of cleaning up the lines and making it more sensical for children with school, etc.
I think what might be helpful is to get a little bit more information on the zoning as for what the use is planned for in the land that it would be going to the Coeur d'Alene School District, because I believe some of that is high-density housing, and it would be, I think, beneficial for us to kind of understand a little bit better about the land swap if we had that information.
Yeah, I think in that, Brian, too, if you had a copy of the plat layout for the Hayden Canyon, what that looked like and the style of home, that would probably give us more information, too, on appraised value and what future assets may potentially look like.
I would be supportive. I think it makes a lot of sense to do it now while there aren't students there. Having gone through the process, I think, with that small piece that came from Lakeland to Coeur d'Alene before, and then we had the entire East Landing subdivision, which was hundreds of homes that they annexed from Post Falls into Coeur d'Alene, and it was messy. And I think it was challenging for Post Falls because they had built to house those students and then lost them, and they also lost that tax base really without a swap. And I think that's what we run the risk of if we don't do something. I think once there's houses there, they're going to do something either one way or the other. And I think probably the way we're looking at it makes sense. They're going to, that small portion of Hayden Canyon is going to go to Lakeland because they're going to want to be where the big portion of Hayden Canyon is. And we've already seen small chunks do it in that Hayden Avenue, Atlas area, and I think we'll continue to see that just because of the proximity to the Coeur d'Alene schools. And so it makes a lot of sense to me. I think when we did this with Post Falls School District, there was a big imbalance also in acreage because they were giving us like 1,600 acres, I think, in vacant land. And we gave them not near that, a few hundred acres, but it was kind of all development, river frontage, and so when we looked at current assessed values, there was a big discrepancy too, because they were picking up a lot of current money. But if you looked at future assessed value projections, it was pretty similar, because they had, less property, but it was more valuable property than what Coeur d'Alene was getting. And I'm guessing we'd see the same thing just based on what Hayden Canyon is supposed to be, and that property values in Hayden tend to be higher. I think even though it's less property, it's probably going to be similar values built out. That high density and apartment stuff is going to be lower value than, what homes are going for around here. It's pretty scary. And I think Hayden Canyon's going to be on the high end of, probably 700,000 plus, I would assume, in that area for home values. And it must be several, 110 acres must be 150 homes or more, I would think, at least. I know they have a lot of green space in that development, but.
Yeah, and
Yeah, I
CFO
think
Wallace
it's
did
more-
address this when he presented to the board about the future assessment and the value and comparing. He did do that in the presentation, sort of made that point. So I think that's a good point to reiterate.
I would like to say, I think we're probably all on the same page. We just have little ends to tie up, and everybody can come hopefully back together and be in agreement and accept the superintendent's recommendations. But I really think that's where we're at, just from our own discussions and, being here today. And then, making sure that we have the answers that the constituents are asking about the meeting. So that's my feel for where we are.
Anybody else on Coeur d'Alene want to say yay or nay? If you have any questions? I think the only thing that we didn't bring up is there was a letter, one letter that we received. And so just noting that for the record that it was Thomas J. McNabb, a partner of the Core Holdings, indicated that they were in favor of this. And so we'll let folks know, and we haven't received any other comment. Okay, without anything else then, again, thank you everyone for attending. Nice to meet you by Zoom, Chair Thompson, and we'll, at least our side, will adjourn.
Yes, if there's nothing further, then Lakeland can adjourn as well.